At this time, I'd like to call this meeting of the Cromwell Board of Education to order at 6 o'clock p.m. Alessandra, would you take roll call, please?
Mrs. Cantwell? Here. Mrs. Kelleher?
Here.
Ms. Franklin? Here. Mrs. Cloutier? Here. Mrs. Lamberson? Here. Mrs. Russ?
Here.
Mrs. Post? Here. Mr. Schuman?
Here.
Mr. Zabrowski?
Here.
Mr. Ireland?
Aye.
And I don't think there's anyone else, from the Board of Finance or Board Town Council.
I don't think so. Thank you. Approval of agenda, additions, deletions, and the review of our agenda highlights. I don't have any additions or deletions. Do you have anything to add or delete? And basically, this meeting is all about the budget, so that will be our highlight for tonight. Correspondence, let's approve that agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Matt, is there a second?
Second.
Alan, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. The agenda is approved. Is there any correspondence that you received, Dr. Macri?
No, I will share the letter about the food service. I'll share the letter from the Robbins family, the donation that I talked to you about, the thank you letter that we shared at the next meeting. But
Okay.
we did actually get the money, the $1,500 for food services, and they want to remain anonymous, so it was really nice. We'll take donations from anyone who wants to. No, it's a foundation. We don't know who donates to it. No. It's it goes into a foundation. No.
The Robin family.
No, it's the Robbins Family Foundation, but we don't know who.
And that was all?
That's it.
Okay. Are there any public comments? Is anyone here for public comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to reports of liaisons from the Town Council, Board of Finance, Cromwell Middle School Building Committee, and Fields Committee. So I think tonight we only have Board of Finance, and we have John Ireland here, Chairman. If you'd like to come on up and give a report, we'd appreciate it.
Good evening. How are we doing?
Good.
Not too much to report. No. No, we're kicking into budget season as I'm here tonight to sit in and see what you guys go through. We've got our regular meeting on Thursday. We've been meeting Long Range Capital to talk about projects coming down the line. And I know we've been in communication on some of the projects that you guys are looking to have done, in town here, and try to move forward and move that on as well. So other than that, that's pretty much it from my end. Unless anyone has any questions.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for John? All right. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Oh, he did.
Okay.
Yep. All right, moving on to superintendent's updates and responses to Board of Ed comments and action items from the prior meeting. Dr. Macri.
Nope, nothing. Everything could wait until the next meeting, so we can move on
Okay.
to budget.
New business, action item A, approval of minutes and motions from our January 10th regular meeting, reference A in our packets. Before we go forward with the motion, we did have a slight change in the wording, and Catherine will let you know what that is.
So we are going to change part of the wording on during the discussion of the new course approval for select choir and jazz band, and it's going to be changed. The first two sentences of Mrs. Lamberson stated she is in support of this and was in a choir and likes the idea, knowing that there will also be after-school opportunities, is going to be eliminated, and it will be replaced with Mrs. Lamberson stated she is in support of eliminating the 9th grade band and chorus. She was in a choir with upperclassmen, and she felt she worked harder, learned more, and grew from being with them. She also supports the new audition classes, knowing that there will also be after-school opportunities.
Does that sound good to you, Jen? Okay. So that language was forwarded to the district, and we have that wording. So is there a motion to approve the minutes with that change?
Motion.
Catherine, second by Jen. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries, and the minutes are approved. And we'll have the revised copy sent to the town. All right, on to what we've been waiting for, the proposed education budget for 2023-2024. Who would like to start?
I can start. Good evening, everyone. As always, first glance at the budget, you'll notice the tables are a little different and we're a little cozier tonight. This isn't something that I put together by myself. This is a team effort. We did spare Miss St. John this evening because she's new to the team, but she did obviously help as well, and all the administrators in the room. But the entire team, obviously, Ann Burke, Michelle DeMoro, Carrie McLean, and Sari O'Leary. We combed through everything we possibly could, and we're giving you a budget that we believe is what our students need to move forward. So obviously the mission of our schools, focusing on the work, which is, this is the work, and placing students first with equity for everyone at the center. On page 3, our goals. And so it's hard sometimes when you're looking at things, and as we're looking at what is important, most important, we always go back to our goals. And these are our goals. Our goals are, of course, to increase academic performance as a school system, to foster safe, healthy, and inclusive learning environments with, and it's huge because it hasn't been normal again yet. It seems normal, but our kids are not where they were before the pandemic, and neither are the adults. Develop equitable, inclusive curriculum district-wide, engage in best practices for leadership and professional development. And this has been added to prepare to develop a STEAM-driven curriculum for the new middle school, which is a huge undertaking we've all committed to. I'll pass it over to Carrie, and she can tell you some of the curriculum mandates in addition to the 3,000 bills that are on the floor right now under education up at the Capitol. There's 3,000 education bills, but these are the ones that, as of now, have the greatest financial impact.
Just before you start, a quick question about viewing online. Can we still see Dr. McLean as she's presenting here, or should she go to the podium?
You can just see the slideshow.
So you can just
Okay,
hear
so
me
it's better to
probably.
see the slide and just listen to you, think? Okay, fine, carry on.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to go over what our mandates and initiatives are. None of this is new. You know, I have talked about all of these before. What is new, though, is that little by little there is more accountability coming down from various places in terms of getting these things done, which we didn't necessarily have before. For example, we just went through the NEASC accreditation process. And, you know, we anticipated that in that process, one of the recommendations was going to be to have a standardized written curriculum throughout. And so, lo and behold, that's one of the things that we have to work on. But now, you know, accreditation is a big deal. The K through 3 right to read legislation, I've talked about this before too. That's really the state saying to us that we have to adopt a K through 3 reading program that checks certain boxes in terms of curriculum goals. Right now, there is a lot of debate from a lot of different groups on what this is going to look like, but the way that the state of Connecticut is presenting it to us is that we have those 7 programs that we have to choose from. In our budget currently that we're going to present, we did not put in for the entire program. What we put in for was a very small amount because next year we applied for a waiver for economic hardship for a year so that we have an additional year to implement the program. The issue, though, is that you can't just say, you know, here, teachers, here's a new program. So we're going to spend next year doing professional development and piloting at different grade levels so that we can kind of learn what the programs look like and make an informed decision on which direction we want to go in. We are also simultaneously working on an additional waiver that the state has granted us to basically say, with these changes, we think that what we are doing would meet these requirements, and we don't necessarily need to purchase a brand spanking new reading program, K through 3 or K through 5. We don't know what the outcome of that will be. We are working on, even if that happens, there'll be some financial impact. It's not going to be the $350,000 that it would be to replace an entire reading program. There'll be some financial impact, but we think that with what we have in for next year, we'll be able to at least start the training, and teachers will have access to the materials. And like I said, we'll start a couple pilots. Recently, the Connecticut State Department of Education has created a model math curriculum for grades 6 through 8. So that is, part of our curriculum agenda is to make sure that we are implementing that with fidelity. When they put out a curriculum, it's a framework essentially, and then we have to kind of fill in all the gaps for what it is that we do on a daily basis. And so, as much as we'd love, for it to be more comprehensive, there's still quite a bit of work that has to be done when you're implementing a new math program. The next bullet is really, it's a big one. We're so happy that we are getting a new middle school, but now the real work begins in terms of developing an interdisciplinary project-based curriculum for the STEAM middle school. This is a complete shift in the way that we're delivering instruction at the middle school level. I'm really excited about it, but it really is a fundamental change in the way that we're delivering curriculum. And so there's a lot of preparation and professional development that needs to go into not only the development of that curriculum, but in professional development in the delivery of that instruction. And the last one is something that I've talked about really probably every time I get up in front of you, and that's the need for us to increase the rigor and make sure that our curriculum is aligned to standards. And I think that is something that, we've been working on diligently, but it is a huge mountain of work that has to be looked at, reviewed, implemented in the classroom, revised. And so it's great work, but it is a lot of work. And so those are the curriculum mandates and initiatives. There is an additional bill on the floor of the legislature currently that is not, it's not going to help us in terms of accountability, because should that bill be passed, we will be required to post our entire curriculum online. Right now, we have our scope and sequence, which basically says this is what we cover and this is the order we cover it in. But we would need to put comprehensive pacing guides so that families would have access to all of the curriculum that their students are being exposed to in the classroom, which is a great thing. But again, we would, depending on what the timeline is for that, we would not be in compliance with that right now. So that's all I have.
Question. You talked about applying for a waiver. How many other school districts are applying for a waiver?
That's a good question.
Can we just hold? I'm so sorry. I meant to say this at the onset of this, but let's just get through the whole presentations and then jot questions down as we go, and that way we can see the whole picture first, and then we'll definitely go back to you and any other questions, and we'll try to keep them in categories too, for each section. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
All right. Another increase to our budget that you'll see under special education pupil services is, as many of you know, I presented at the last meeting our Effective School Solutions Partnership, ESS. So I'll just be pretty brief, just because I think many of you already know the program. But it's our newest program here at the high school. It's a therapeutic environment in the public school setting that is for students with mental health needs, social emotional concerns. Right now, our current contract with them consists of the 2 clinicians, and each clinician services up to 10 students each. And like I said last week, we're going to be close to 16 with room for a few more as students come. So that's kind of where we are with the intakes. These clinicians offer group individual counseling services. They also have a family therapy component, as well as offering district-wide professional development to the staff, as well as families and the community. And the goal of ESS, as everybody knows, is to return students back to district that are outplaced, and to avoid outplacing current students. So this is anticipated because we know numbers change as student needs change. So an anticipated cost savings for our contract with Effective School Solutions for the next school year would be $300,000 that I wouldn't have to spend on students for tuition, transportation. Currently, we already are starting to bring students back, like I've explained to you in the past. And there's more students that I, plan to bring back because we'll have the support of the high school for them. And students right now that we're keeping in district because we have the ESS support. So, like I said, the number is not fixed. And as we know, student needs change, but, that's an approximate.
All right, thank you. Dr. Macker, are you taking the next slide?
Yep. I'll take the next slide. Obviously, these are our drivers. Salaries, benefits, special education, transportation, and inflation. I have utilities just to give you an idea, but obviously inflation in every single solitary thing that we are doing across the board. I won't get into all this specifically because I'm about to as we move forward. So next slide. The budget summary, quickly in 21-22, we had a $32,750,000 budget with a 2.97. We did ask for a much higher number, but that was what we were given. 2022, 2023, we did come in with a 3.81, and the Board of Finance approved the 3.81, which we were very grateful for. And this year, our it should say superintendent's. You didn't adopt it, yeah. Superintendent's proposed budget is a 6.94. So the dollar increase, you will see broken down on the next page by object. Okay, so you're going to be given a number, and then you'll be given a percentage increase in all of the object areas. And Ann will take that over.
Over the next set of slides, we'll go through each of the object codes, and I can kind of give an overview of what makes up those numbers, and afterwards we can talk about and answer questions. This is another way to depict just the increase. So you can see that our increases are mostly in salaries, professional technical services, and other purchase services. We did have a decrease in equipment. So the overall increase is just depicted in this line graph for you. Or actually, I think it's called a bar graph. This next colorful one shows the entire budget as it's split out into its individual categories by object. Benefits and salary are our biggest part of our budget at 75% this year. Some other big areas, as I mentioned from the other slide, other purchase services, and benefits is always tied to our salaries. This slide here, which looks better in your book than it does on the screen, I'm not sure why. This was just our way to explain to everyone how the money that we have, or the different parts of the pieces of the pie. So while we have a certain budget amount, that budget is supported by a town appropriation, education equalization grant, which is money given from the state of Connecticut to the to the town on behalf of the Board of Education. Very complicated formula, but every town, there's a whole list, and it says what every town is given for their equalization. The next section is state grants, and the last one is federal grants. And those numbers come straight out of our audits that PF O'Connor Davies does our audit every year. We have a federal audit that's done of our federal grants and an audit that's done of our state grants, as well as a comprehensive audited financial report that is the town and the Board of Education, all the town departments and the Board of Education together. So this is just our way of explaining the pieces of the pie, where the money comes from, and the other one was how the money is spent of that pie. Without the state funds and the federal grants and the equalization grant, we would have to have a much larger appropriation from the town in order to support what it is that we do. And these numbers are for the 21-22 22 school year. So this is the year that has recently closed, and that just kind of explains how it is that we get what we get. Again, this picture's better in your book than on here, but this is our COVID grants. Our ARP ESSER, 1.3 million. Our ESSER 2 was 659,000. We have two SPED specific, one ARP IDEA and one ESSER 2, and we were given a small amount for supporting our homeless children. And so the COVID grants that we were given was $2,152,240. We will not have these funds coming into the 23-24 budget year. And as we've been talking about for years, this is the grant cliff. This is what we had and what we won't have coming into the next budget.
Okay, so quickly, I don't know what happened, but we'll figure it out. You have it on your last two slides. And looking and comparing some of the things as we're looking at other districts and their budget as they prepare and we're sharing numbers, especially in our DIRG, we're coming along very similarly in our increase. Some districts are higher than us, some are 1% lower than us, but all of us are falling similarly, especially in our DIRG. And we believe, in having conversations with other superintendents, it's because, one, we didn't get as much of our funding. We didn't get as much of the resources that, let's say, alliance districts received, and rightfully so. So we ran out of money quicker. Some districts have more money left over. They have until September 2024, right, to spend it. We do not. And we also did have our teacher negotiations contract come right at the perfect timing. And we settled at an average settlement, which we'll talk about, which is at about a 4.08%, which is the average settlement. Some districts who might be coming in slightly lower, you may be reading in the newspapers, may not have had to negotiate their teacher contracts yet. And that will change. They are just putting it off by a year. We just got hit twice with two big things at the same time. With that being said, grant positions moved to LEA, so that means positions that we have in our grants that we have actually moved. There were more positions than this. Some we had to cut. Oh, sorry, yeah, it's our our local education. It's us, the district. Sorry, local education association. Yeah. Wait, agency, right? I always forget because I never actually use it. I always forget what it stands for myself. So, yeah, I could have. I know what PCBA is. Yeah, I can have Sari go ahead and talk about that's the Registered Behavior Tech, the RBT. But I'll have Sari go over what an BCBA stands for. Go ahead, and an RBT.
A BCBA is Board Certified Behavior Analyst, and an RBT works under a Board Certified Behavior Analyst, Registered Behavior Technician, and both of their roles are to focus on students with behaviors and work on distinguishing and putting behavior plans into place, specifically for students, that have IEPs. So those are those two roles.
So these are the positions that we grant funded for a couple of years. Some were 1 year, some were 2, and we put back into the LEA because we will really struggle meeting our goals that are on page 2 if we don't have them in our LEA. Now, you will notice some positions, we had many positions, and those positions have been cut, and people will be notified, but I can't give you an exact of what that looks like, but I'll talk a little bit more on page 15. So I can't tell you who, because it's still too early. For example, we have teacher cuts in here that you may have noticed for teachers, where those teachers will come from and what that looks like. It's January 24th, 2023. We still have attrition that can possibly come forward through retirements, and we still have things that could possibly change in programming when we look at scheduling. So I'm giving you an idea of where we believe there could be some cuts right now, but exactly where those cuts are may change. It's just too early in the year. So if we move to salaries, 100. that just tells you, repeats what I just said. For certified staff, you will notice a very large increase of Why is this happening? I shared with, Matt, did you save it? I'm sorry, did you save it as a PDF or no?
As a PowerPoint.
And I sent it to you through Google.
Yeah.
So all the numbers are not where they're supposed to be. I don't know if,
Do you want me to change it to?
you know what, maybe if we just use my drive, it'll,
Yeah, that's, I can pull it up in Google though too.
can you do that without
Yeah.
looking at all my, yeah, I think you better.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. It's so confusing when the public is looking at it this way, because it's not what you have in your, it's not lined up the way you have it lined up, so it gets confusing. Thanks, Matt. So we're on 15. Sure. Ah, much better. One back.
14, yeah.
It's all right. So it's 14 there. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. It's 15 for me. Okay, so this tells a better story. So this is how it was made. So it tells you what we adopted, what we are proposing, and the increase, which is a large increase, which is why you saw that big blasting number at the beginning in our pie chart. That makes up for salaries for all of these people, certified, non-certified, and it just gives you an idea of who everybody is in our district. And the new teacher contract begins on July 1st, 2023. We had negotiations. We were lucky. We had Dipti Post and Jen Lamberson, who understand education and how it works. And we had John Ireland, who I want give a huge shout out to. He sat through every single solitary meeting with us to learn the process. And I think it was a little bit eye-opening for John as well as to how it works in education, because everyone always says education is their own world. And seeing it all the way through, hours upon hours in negotiations, gave him a good picture of what it's like. So we did go to mediation, which isn't a bad thing. It was fine. We have a mediator. The mediator goes between the union and us, the administration, and we come to an agreement. And we made our agreement, and this is what we settled at. So that is that area. The next line is benefits. We did get our number. We believe this will be the final number. We don't believe it'll be any higher. The town is actually meeting with David Caslin, hopefully to get us more of a decrease, but I don't think we're going to see it. Last year, if you remember, we had a 0% increase, unheard of. That's why we were able to make it to a 3.8, and Ann and I were doing a dance. It was a miracle. But this year, they're proposing a 3% increase, which is not awful, considering. Okay. Professional technical services. This is a big one for us because this is where ESS lies. And remembered, it's hard to show what we're saving because obviously it's brand new. We just started in January. November, but really started just about a couple of weeks ago. What you don't see here and what's hard to tell is that we would have had other students that would have cost us so that they can get the proper placement. And we were able to keep them in district, which is a good thing for this year. Bringing students back is definitely what Sari is working on with her team, but that just takes a little bit longer because you have to gain the trust of the families so that they will have their children return to school. And then they want to learn more about ESS and what will be in place for them. Some parents are very, very open to the idea and are ready to make that change. And others, they just want to see a little bit more data, which is completely understandable. So it's a transition period. We do think we're going to see, as years go on, we're going to see a big cost savings in this area. So this was a good move to move forward. And our kids are doing well that are in the program. The other things, curriculum and professional development, much smaller increases most of it is ESS. Legal, audit, school resource officers, athletic officials, which are going up, and timers, police coverage, and all of that. That all is going up. Everything is going up. Property services, line 400. Not a huge increase. It's just maintenance. An increase to equipment and repairs. We have to maintain. We never know. This could change. It has changed frequently. But this is the best number we have right now. Other purchase services. So this has been a very interesting year, and as you know, I'm working with DACO to negotiate the contract. That's in the hands of legal. We did meet with DACO, and we're working out some specifics. DACO has not been able to, and no fault of their own. There's a driver shortage. There's a shortage. You see it all over the place. We're not the only ones. It's nationwide. So they gave us the permission, because they have no choice, because we have to be able to transport our students with special needs to and from home. We have an increase in homeless students. We have never seen, we have 9 students who are homeless in Cromwell. That's never been, maybe 1, 2, 3 max. Times are tough. And we are responsible for educating, transporting, and such. So what we had to do, and I explained this to you, which is why we are very much so in the negative, along with a lot of my colleagues out there, is that we have to contract with whoever will drive our students to school. We don't have a choice. We have to get them to school, and we have to pay premium. So kids that we thought perhaps may cost $60,000 to transport may be costing us $120,000 to transport. They call the shots. Whoever is available for us to transport our students, we call around, we look around. Most people can't do it.
Could I just give one example? It could range from like $30 a day to, if we can't find anybody, we have to find a private car company, to $100 a day. So and we have to get the students to school. So if we can't lock in the $30 a day company, we have to go with 100. And of course, it's about the students, but it's a cost for us.
Right.
So.
Right. So we are, like I always say, we're legally responsible, but morally and ethically, but legally we were responsible. That has been a huge increase for us this year. So this is where it gets difficult, right? We have to anticipate, because of the way we do our budget, we have to anticipate that DACO is going to be able to fulfill their contract next year for these students. So as we put this budget together, I am anticipating today with Siri and the rest of the team that DACO is going to be able to fulfill what they need to be able to do at a certain rate. That's how we build our contract, based on the students that are in special education who are sitting in our seats today, January 24th. Well, maybe even January 14th, and we've had some changes already. So that's how we build our budget. After this point, the amount of changes that happen between now and next January 24th are very impossible to predict. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And I explained to you that prediction is so difficult. Now we add with the tuition increase, but the transportation increase. And it is something that districts have not ever had to face before, ever. So over the last 2 years, especially this year, we, as you know, we're in difficult shape for transportation, particularly for special education. So the other areas, this is great news. We have a decrease in magnet tuition because we have less students attending magnet schools and staying in districts. So that's a great thing. We want to continue to do that, especially with our new middle school. We want kids to stay here. Okay, I'm sorry, the next slide is supplies. So a small increase. These are the things that we know we don't want to live without, but can we do it? Can we make it last for maybe another year? We're going to do our best, right? Because we cannot decrease in electricity. We cannot decrease in gas bills. We can't. We know we're going to get the bills. We're getting them. We have to pay them. We have to keep the place open. There are other things we don't want to do. We've decreased little bits and pieces and tried to figure out how are we going to make it work for one more year. This doesn't mean this is going away. It's just going away for 1 year. when we talk about instructional. Equipment, again, so things that were proposed that we just won't have. If you're wondering why we're in the we're decreased there, we tried to save money. These are areas that we think we could just not make purchases for at least another year. And those are things like we don't have an ice maker in our kitchen that we just built for our culinary arts kitchen. That's the $3,000 ice maker. We're not going to have an ice maker in our kitchen. We have to make ice. These are things that it's reality. These are the things we have to go without, and we will. We usually replace one calf table because they're in rough shape. Every year we replace one. We're not going to be replacing for next year. Capital outlay, we've decreased for both instructional and non-instructional equipment. That means for servers, cameras, network infrastructure of about $48,000. Will we make it through if something happens, like for example today, our server went down, the entire thing crashed, right? I'm not shaking. We all had a small nervous breakdown and then we moved on. And we had to fix it and at the cost of the rate of whatever we get charged. But we can't do anything about that. Okay, and then the last page is, and when I say that, I say it lightly, and I think this is the hard thing that everyone has a hard time understanding, is that we budget year to year. It would be wonderful if school systems can budget 2 to 3 years. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. We may not be able to predict that far out, but we start with a certain amount of money, and by June 30th, we are expected to expend all of that money and come as close to a zero as we can. And that's what we've done responsibly for a very long time, at least since I started and Ann started. We don't get to put a cushion in, even though we know that we most likely will have other needs for transportation or for special education. That's not how our budget works. We're not allowed to do that. We have to try to do our best to settle at a zero by the time the year ends, and that's what we did. So before, I just want to show you, we actually did make cuts before we got to the 6.94. And where did we make those cuts? We're looking at some teaching and stipend salaries. So we're looking at approximately 3 or 4 teaching positions. Exactly where, we're not 100% sure. There are some ideas. To give you one idea, we have had very, very favorable class sizes in Cromwell. Very rarely have we gone at the elementary level above 22. Once in a while we do, but very rarely. That is wonderful, and I would love to continue to be able to do it. But when you're trying to cut over $1 million, we could sit here and try to say, takes $3,000 from this and $2,000 from the ice machine and $3,000. We could do that all day long, which is exactly what we did, but we had to get to the big stuff. You're cutting millions, you have to get to people and services, and that's where you get your big money. So we've talked about those kinds of ideas, just a little, the support staff salaries, that includes, perhaps 3 paraprofessionals. Although the one thing that we're trying to do is not lay off people. So, for example, at the end of every year, we lose at least 3 paraprofessionals. These paraprofessionals, it's not a fake number because these are paraprofessionals that may not be one-to-ones, may not work with students at all. They work with students not one-to-one. We have to look at doing things a little bit differently here. So that's something that we're talking about. How do we look at our security in this building, and how do we change some job responsibilities so that it's more up to date and perhaps maybe saving some money? We've had those conversations, and all these conversations we've had with building administrators. We've met quite a few times with all the building administrators. We continue to problem solve and process all of this, but there are no great answers. There are no great answers to any of these problems. They're real, I think, pretty big problems. The biggest ones we've seen in a very long time in this district, I believe. We also are looking at, like we said, class size. We may have some attrition, so could that possibly be a real person? It could. But we don't know. It's still too early to tell. And then the rest of it is very self-explanatory. I went through it all. Those were the two that were just, I wanted to give you a little more context to. The rest we're just going to try and do without. The professional technical services is a reading program, which is on the low side for $310,000. It's on the low side. We kept about 40 in so that we can meet, so that we can say we're doing, and which we are, will be doing, so that we can meet the needs of the waiver in order to pass. The state can then come back and say, no, you have to buy a program. And at that point, if that happens in 2 years from now, a year from now, I guarantee that number will probably be more expensive. But we don't have that money, and I'm not alone. We are everyone, I would say, all superintendents. There might be a couple out there who have the money, I don't know how, who won't apply for the hardship waiver. I don't really think anybody is. Some have had terrible curriculum, and they've said it to me. I've talked to couple superintendents that we've had not a great curriculum, and we haven't had a good program in years. And we see this as a way to get that program now. And we're going to move forward and not apply for the waiver and buy the programming. And it's going to cost about $300,000 to $400,000. And we've been talking to our boards about it, and they may move forward. Those are very few. Most of us are in our boat. We have the expertise internally to apply for the waiver. If it's going to get passed, we're going to get it passed. We're all, myself, Carrie, Amy, we all have more degrees in early literacy than we can possibly talk about. And I think if anybody gets it, I think Cromwell's going to be high up there in getting it. We know how to do it. This is where we wanted to go anyway. The science of reading is where we were moving. Remember I talked to you a little bit about Lucy Calkins, and I wasn't a fan when I first got here. I had no control over purchasing Lucy Calkins. That was before me. It's the Reader's Writers Workshop model. I never loved it as a curriculum person. But we came here, and Carrie and I inherited it, and we started to make small changes. That is more based on the science of reading, because that's the expertise that Amy and Carrie and myself have. We're making those small adjustments with teachers. They've been great. The Dibbles training, I'll talk to you in words that you won't understand. I don't want to do that because they're acronyms, and I can't tell you what the actual word means. It's a reading assessment that can tell you where students are as far as acquiring learning acquisition skills for early literacy. Our teachers have been wonderful at ECS. They have been gobbling it up. I can't tell you how awesome they've been, but we need to continue to prepare them for what may come, which could possibly be a program, and that's on the low side. And all of us are in the same boat. And that is it. Feel free to ask questions, or if we can't answer them, we'll write them down and get them to you, responses to you. But this being said, this is the best budget, the best number that we can get to, where we feel that our students are still getting the education that they need, and our staff is getting the support that they need in order to educate our kids in a safe and healthy learning environment.
So before we get started, I just wanted to, I think the best way to do this would be to start with one person at a time, one question at a time, unless you have a follow-up that ties directly into your initial question. But we'll just take one question at a time, starting with some overall questions. If anyone has anything, I know, Alan, you had, I think, a grant question. Did you want to start out with that?
The history of grants and I found it.
Is your mic on?
I was asking a question about what do the grants mean, and then the back of it explains it, but I don't know whether that's ongoing. Is it pretty stable?
So just like an overview about
Overview
grants.
of
Okay.
grants, yeah.
That's a great
Like this giant. Let's see, I went too far. So, in the book each year, we provide a list of grants, and the grants that you see here are stable. We do anticipate, and we have applied for the grants for the next year. If you notice, these grants most of the grants run 2 years. So the applications have been sent in for the title grants, as well as the IDEA grants. We are doing those shortly, Sari. I think we're in the process of applying for those. The numbers might change slightly from year to year, as you see depicted on here. For example, with the IDEA, we got maybe $3,000 more, give or take. The title grants went down slightly, but these, I believe, are stable grants, as well as the open choice grants and the Smart Start. Those are all one-year grants, and we do apply for those annually. So the grants that are on this particular document, I do believe will continue, as opposed to the COVID grants, which we know are going away.
The new grants come out, or is this
New grants do come out.
these grants that are out there?
Occasionally, new grants will come out. We apply for all the grants that come out that we qualify for. Unfortunately, because we are not considered a high needs district, we are often not chosen after sending in the application. The only grant we currently have pending right now is a mental health grant, and we're hoping to hear within the next 2 to 4 weeks whether or not we will receive those funds. Sari, 120,000?
Yeah, so the mental health grant, we get 120,000 for 2 years if we receive that. So we're hopeful that we will get those funds, but we're not. You never know.
We were supposed to hear at the end of December. We haven't heard yet. We did apply for one that we were putting ourselves out there for, and we thought we might have a chance. They tried to disqualify us before, and I got us to be qualified at least, and then they didn't pick us anyway, and that was
It
scary.
was a after school grant that would have allowed us to put some of the resources that we're going to need to develop the STEAM middle school program into that grant. We were really upset that we didn't get the grant, but again, you know, the towns that get these things are generally towns that are in much higher need than we are. You know, we had a great program planned, and it was pretty disappointing, and Dr. Macri
Right.
jumped through hoops to make sure that we
If-
were at least in the running for it, and
If there's something that I can hang my hat on where I know we do not qualify, we won't apply because it's hours and hours of work and we don't have a grant writer. It's this team right here, which is fine. But if there's something that says that is wishy-washy, we will apply. And this last time, I called the commissioner because they had disqualified us and I didn't think they had the right to disqualify us, and then they let us qualify, but then they didn't pick us anyway. There's nothing I could do about that, but I did get us qualified. But we got the "I'm so sorry" letter. You didn't get the money. So we are a district that is not demographically a district that is in need of improvement. We're not considered a district that is poor, and that's just to say it. We have funding, and that's how they look at who qualifies for what.
So I'm sure there are a lot of other grant questions. Can we stick to grants for just a moment?
Yep.
Is your question grant related? Okay.
Okay, so on the total cost of education on slide 11, you show the grants in there from the education equalization, the state grants and the federal grants. And this was for the fiscal year ended that we just finished in '22. But the town appropriation and the total amounts don't tie back to what our adopted budget was.
The way the grants are stated, and I understand your confusion, the way the grants are stated in the financial reports do not tie one for one because of the timing of how the grants are spent.
So are you saying that we can spend a 2-year grant more in the first year than in the second year?
It depends on how the grant is written.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It was just representative so that we all understand that there are multiple pieces that make up how we fund education. It's not just what we're asking in a budget for a $30 million budget.
Right.
It comes from different pieces. So I just was
So-
hoping to be,
Just to follow up to that, when we ask for our percentage from the town,
Yes.
just to clarify then, it does include the grants that we expect to use throughout the year, correct?
yes.
Okay, Kelly.
this is a bit of a two-parter, but, so our increase this year for salaries is 1.4 million. Last year it was 400,000. So understanding there's $820,000 of grant money that's making up part of that 1.4, was there, last year, were there any grant positions that fell off that made that 400, or is that like truly reflective? Like, is that 820 all new money? That, like, did we have any grant positions fall off last year?
No.
No, okay.
Can I just want to make sure, did we change anything last year that fell off in ESSER and moved to choice? I mean, it would have gone from one grant to another. I just want to make sure we answer. I thought we had one or two positions that fell off because we ran out of some ESSER money and we had to move to choice.
It wasn't a falling off, it was an intentional, that we were
move.
only going
Okay.
to have
wanted
a
to be sure.
position in a grant for 1 year. So it wasn't,
Falling off,
we
we
had
intentionally
planned-
did that.
we
Okay.
intentionally had
I just wanted
planned
to make
for it.
sure, so we're.
So if we were to look at it without grants, it would be about a $600,000 increase. Is that 200, like, up from what we were last year, like, solely based on the negotiations that we had this year? Or-
No, it's actually, it's based on multiple things. I have some notes here, just, go to the right
Kelly, what
section.
page are you looking at for your numbers? Okay, thank you.
You have to add the 200 together.
So, overall, and we're kind of getting off, I don't know if you want me to continue, because this isn't directly related to grants, but it's
No,
more
feel
just-
free. Go ahead.
Keep going. Okay, so of the 1.4, we had ins and outs. So we had positions that moved into the grant, as we showed, for both certified and non-certified. We had contractual increases for both certified and non-certified. We also had decreases to certified and non-certified, which was also on a slide. One thing that we made a decision to increase the substitutes, the long-term substitute line in the upcoming budget, because we have had this particular year a large uptick in medical leaves of absence. So when we're looking at substitutes, it's not just your daily subs, it's your building subs, it's also your medical leave subs. So we have added in a larger amount than we usually do because we are finding that there are a lot of those leaves happening, and we really need to be aware of that because we have to pay the teacher if they have time, and we also have to hire a substitute. So the cost was becoming very readily apparent in this particular year that we had so many absences. So we made a determination that we needed to up that by about $200,000, a little more than $200,000. So the offsets of the ins and the outs are how we got to the 1.3. Obviously, pulling positions in is a large portion of that, but our increases, especially on the certified, are significantly higher than we've trended in past years. And I actually have in my notes here, so the salary increase for 22-23 was about $400,000. The year before was $687,000, and the year before that was $819,000. So depending on when the contract is renewed and what the renewal comes in at, and that's both blending, that's putting together certified and non-certified, and we have contracts that renew at all different times. So the number it's never going to be a steady increase because of the way that the contracts are written and renewed.
So you would almost anticipate a lower number than this next year?
Potentially, because we wouldn't have the bump of wanting to keep social workers in positions like that.
Got it.
So,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Okay, Jen, I think I saw your hand up. Did I? Not? No. Anyone else have a question? Matt?
So, still kind of on grants here on that slide 11, the total cost of education from June 2022. We've got over $9 million there that's coming in from state, federal grants, and education equalization. That's ECS.
It's state.
Okay.
State of Connecticut.
Okay, so the question is, when do we receive that? Is it like, do we get it all at once? Is it kind of spread out through the year? Is some
it's-
of this still coming in? Excuse me.
Keeping in mind that it does come directly to the town,
Okay.
I believe there are 2 payments that we get during the year. I may have a report, but it is 1 or 2 payments directly to the town, so it doesn't come to the Board of Ed. But it helps offset the town's cost of whatever appropriation they do give us.
Okay, so then the numbers listed here that ended June 2022, we've already
Yes.
received all that.
That's correct.
And we're anticipating similar going forward?
Similar, yes.
Clearly not exact, but
Yeah, I can look to see if those numbers have been published. I don't have it with me tonight.
thank you.
I have a quick one. Some of the grants that I've heard that we had in the past was the homeless grant, and I didn't know if that's something that we might get again next year. Are they planning to continue it in any way? Obviously, we have the same issues.
We have only gotten a very, very small amount of money to help with homeless transportation in the past. We don't have any other funds that come in to support homeless.
Okay. And then the magnet school tuition potential grant, that's something that's on the horizon? Wasn't there?
We don't have a grant for magnet schools are you referring to our students that go to magnet schools?
Okay, so you're talking about legislation. This is pretty cool. We could talk about it now. So it's on the grant topic, but it's on the floor right now. So there are formulas. There's formulas for how schools bill us for students who attend magnet schools. There's also formulas for how the state, obviously you understand how we're reimbursed for students with special needs. There's also formulas that are used by, if we were to outplace students, how much money we pay for their evaluations to attend that school. There are so many different formulas out there that nobody really knows. There's no perfect number. So what the superintendents through the education committee we're proposing right now, through the education committee, there's a bill out there that's saying we want to do magnet schools. We want to participate. We want to participate in all of this. However, you can't keep throwing the burden on the sending district. We can't afford it anymore. So how about we say the state federally somehow, or state, however, there's a grant that they would like to say, that the money goes directly to the sending school district and we don't have to pay it. So if I have a student that's going to the arts in Hartford, I don't have to cut a check to crack anymore. That check is now going to come from the state directly, right? So that is on the floor. And then once we move past that, then I don't know if we'll see this in our lifetime. I sure hope so, because the special education formula is really the one that is unfair. And I believe it's a disservice to our kids as a whole. And we need more support federally and state. Like, we need more support for our students who need more services. And that's going to follow this, but we want to get through that first. Is it going to pass through legislation? I don't know. It's one of the 3,000 that are out there, but I heard this one has more teeth in it. And if you want to, I could find out more through CABE, and you could perhaps, when it's, I know you all work, or maybe just write a letter in support of it to the legislators of why you think, that would be really helpful for our school district, because we can't calculate that number. It's a moving target. It will help districts, for example, I'll give you New Britain, East Hartford, much, much more than us, because they probably have over $3 million that they have to give to turnover. We right now have about, I think we're at 300? And we're actually decreased because our kids are staying, which is a good thing. So it'll still be helpful, trust me. We're not going to, balk at $300,000, but it's going to have a potential savings on the bigger districts. But that's up in legislation right now.
Not happening next year.
No, unless
Okay.
it passes in May, and we'll be good.
Okay.
And I'll let you know when they're going to hear testimony about that one, so you can start thinking about writing one as a board member. They do actually like hearing from board members.
Okay. Any other questions related to grants? If not, do we want to move on to, if we go back to the beginning, we can start with if there were any questions on the curriculum mandates and initiatives for Dr. McLean. Go ahead, Matt.
I have a question that's not, I guess it's grant related. I was thinking of it more as position related. but the grant positions that were moved to us, to local education agency, we have 15 total positions that we're moving from grant funded to now we're funding. How many did we have that weren't included? What was the total before we got it down to 15?
Do you remember? We'd have to go back and look.
I heard you say that we didn't move all of the positions, but I'm just curious. We have,
Yeah.
okay, but I'm just like, was 15 the majority of them were moved, and were okay? So I guess the kind of the follow up there is, were all of these funded? Were how many of these positions that we moved from grants into us existed before COVID?
That's a great
COVID
question.
money?
The 6 major ones, or 4, tell me if I'm wrong, that we did not have here when I got here, and you all remember, those of you that were on here, we didn't have social workers. It blows my mind to even think that 4 years ago we did not have a social worker in this district. Thank God we do now. 2 of them are paid out of grants, and we had 2 before that. We added the 2 more with grants, so we went a year with 2, which was helpful, but not all that helpful. We needed 1. And then the whole debacle with the social studies teachers. Do you remember that? We didn't have our 6th grade in Cromwell, and we may have to go back to this model, which we do not want to go back to this model. We are doing our best to not go back to this model. 6th graders, social studies was not being taught by certified teachers, which is okay in 6th grade, because you could still teach the elementary model, teach down. But it was a huge disservice to 6th graders because they were falling behind in social studies. So those were things that we didn't have, that we put in, that that were like the basics that should have been happening anyway.
So the 2 teaching positions are, I'm assuming, social studies teachers for 6th grade?
Well, interestingly enough, no, not right now.
Okay.
Because we're looking at the number, and that's why I said I'm afraid to speak too much. We looked at that too.
Okay.
And if we have to make deeper cuts, that is an area in which we are looking, which we don't want to do, because it really does destroy any of the progress that we've made. And we do have social studies standards, as you know. So the way it works with grants too, and this is hard to understand, is if we cut a position, it doesn't necessarily mean the person, and you'll understand this, Matt, because it's this more senior person gets to stay, right? So
Right.
you cut the other people, the way the contract, because CBA's contracts, collective
Yeah,
bargaining.
so if you
units
end up
receive.
cutting a position for a reduction of workforce, you're actually cutting someone who's at a lower salary than you
Right.
can't cut someone who's at a higher salary. They've been here longer. They
Right.
have seniority.
So what will happen, social studies is the perfect example, and I don't want everyone to get nervous because this is just an example. We will look at the social studies program in the entire district, and we may notice that we may have low numbers at the high school for so that we can offer what kids need in order to graduate. That doesn't mean what we want our kids to have, right? That just means what they need, the bare minimum to graduate. And we say this is what they need to graduate. No other electives are going to be taught, which means more study halls for kids. But we don't have to pay teachers because it's a duty, right? So then we would decrease perhaps there in order to save the social studies program at the middle school. I'm not saying we're going to do that, but that's the displacement that can possibly happen.
Those are the kinds of decisions that have to be
made, yeah. And so they're really hard and heavy decisions, and that's where we're at right now. We're at hard and heavy, difficult decisions to make for programmatically. And we've worked our tails off to get where we are. We never anticipated COVID. None of us did, to be honest with you. We would be further along in some of the ways of which we're doing things. But this is the hand we were dealt, so we're going to deal with it the best we can.
So the grant-funded positions that were excluded from this group of 15, they were just deemed non-essential, essentially. That sounded funny, but
It's
yeah.
terrible to say, but yes, we for our goals.
I'm not
align
talking
with our
about the
goals.
people. People are
not
essential.
the people are
It's-
essential.
it's
the
the
position.
positions
Yes.
are- okay.
Yes. We thought of. We got as creative as we can, where some people can take this responsibility and some people can take that responsibility, but we have completely maxed that out at this point with the
Okay.
6.94.
And if we did have to, eliminate any of these other 15 positions, what would the consequence be to the district? We would not be able to provide certain services, or people would be stretched too thin, or...
Right. So everything comes with a cost. And so at this point, in order for us to meet our goals, which are stated, and everyone's going to have different goals, right? But as a school district, as your superintendent, of course, my goal is to make sure that this is a school, and school kids have to come out of school safe, healthy, well, and educated. Those are our responsibilities. And however we all agree that this is part of doing that or not is a certain different way. From my perspective, the education component is extremely important, and it should be. From your superintendent, that's what you want. So that's what will happen to the best of our ability if we were to get a 6.94%. We won't see catastrophic. Will we see a hit? Will situations change slightly? Yes. Can we make those changes permanently? Probably not. It could be a 1 or a 2 year issue. If we could work on, and which we are with the town, working on how do we fix some of our facilities through bonding and other programming, we can make that work. But long term, we can live this, short term, we can live this way. If we have to go back and make other cuts, they could be possibly crippling in certain areas. In the areas that we don't want it to be crippling, obviously, it's what we're here for.
Well, and it's all a balancing act of dominoes.
Right.
If you eliminate 2 social workers, then you don't have enough manpower to handle some of the mental health issues, and then those students wind up, you can't, it's preventative, so then you can't prevent some of the special education issues that arise, and all of a sudden, those costs go up in that side, so you save money on 2 social workers, but you spent 3 times as much because now you need to provide more services. And
So your comparison is perfect, Matt, because what happened this year, in some of our situations, we could not find a special education teacher. So we actually had to contract for the first time ever. It is an area of need, with a service to provide service hours, because not only do we have all of what you just said, but now we have a shortage in staff. Right. So now we're going out to RESCs and hiring people at sometimes double or triple the rate. So the chances of where we used to be able to get, let's say, a 0.5 special education teacher, or a point, some people used to job share, split. That can't happen anymore, because not only the position, people don't exist. It doesn't exist. No one could afford it, but it doesn't even exist. We used to get, I would say, I know when I applied for my job, my teaching position, 1994, there were over 420 applicants for one job. That's crazy. Right now, if we get 20 applications for an elementary position, we are praying and hoping and praying. Less people are going into the field. And sadly, that drives the need higher, which is why we settled where we settled, because we want to keep our teachers, especially after we train them, and this is where we are right now. So it'll be cost prohibitive in so many of the ways of what you just explained, and then some.
Well, and I remember we had this special education supervisor position open, and had
right now, it's been rough for Sari, but we're all pitching in. Everyone's pitching in to help. We're all helping each other to the best of our ability. But Sari just said to me the other day, I feel so guilty because through the multi-tier systems approach, we want to prevent students from getting into special education, right?
Yeah.
Where they require service. So you need someone to oversee that, and Sari can only oversee so much, especially with students that are outplaced. She's evaluating, you're in many different places. Most districts our size, we actually looked around, have a supervisor and a special ed director. This year we just can't do it. We are in a hole. We did, and we would have been in a bigger hole. I can't let it happen again for another year. We are doing the best we can. Everyone's picking up the assistant principals. Everyone's been wonderful in trying. We have to meet the needs of our students. We're not taking away any direct services, but the toll that it's taking on the special education department as a whole is is rough.
And it's only been 2 weeks.
It's only been a couple weeks. And it's the same in the curriculum department, just like with writing those waivers and getting into classrooms and monitoring instruction. You see, right, whether we all like it or not, we all have to be, we are all held accountable, so we have to hold everybody accountable for doing their jobs. So when there's less of that going on, there's less accountability and things fall through the cracks. And it's not because we're trying to catch you, we're trying to help you. So if something isn't happening, right, for example, in special education and Siri isn't there because she can't, she's in a million different places, something may not be happening where the supervisor may have picked up on it much quicker, and then we can fix the problem much sooner. And that's what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Sure.
Was there a hand up over here before? Jen? Yes, we can move on to curriculum, sure.
So I just had a question about the K-3 right to read legislation. You mentioned piloting a program next year. Are you piloting one program, more than one program?
The answer to that is, I don't know. We have created a literacy steering committee that my communication out was that we're going to establish for February 1st. Amy and I have been going through the materials, and there is one program that's kind of floating to the top for us, but we don't want to make that decision in isolation. So we have plans to, with the Middlesex Consortium, have teachers and administrators go and review all of the materials. You know, we don't have a ton of programs to choose from, right? Some are going to be cost prohibitive. Some are just, they look like wonderful programs, but they just have dollar signs that we can't afford. And so, you know, some of those, it kind of narrows it down. And so, you know, I want to make sure that we get the opinions of all of the people that are going to be involved in this process. I think, you know, for me, I've had the chance to explore the materials, and I have my opinions, but I want to make sure that everybody else is on the same page. If I had my way, we would pilot one. But if the teachers want to pilot more than one, then I will fully support that.
To just continue with that for a quick second, when you said one is a lot more than the other, what are we talking? Like what?
Hundreds of thousands.
So some are 300,000, some are 600,000?
Well,
Okay.
depending, you know, like they all have bells and whistles, right? So, you know, you can get a reading program and then it comes along with an entire personalized learning technology component and professional development packages. And you know, we can have coaches that can come in from the companies and they can work with the teachers and all of that. It's a lot of bells and whistles that we don't necessarily as a district have to spend because we have the expertise in the district to do that, which saves us a lot of money in a lot of cases because we can do that work ourselves.
And that's,
So
I
those
think
are
that's
things that
really
we don't
important.
need. You know, like we don't
Right.
need people to come in and help to support us because we do have the expertise right here. So that's helpful.
When we talk about other districts, when we have this conversation, and I don't want to call any other districts out, but they're in my consortium of, and I'm in two different ones, so you don't know which ones. They don't have the internal expertise to do the professional development. They don't have the early learning literacy specialists. We do. We do a lot of our training. Our training is turnkey. We expect our administrators, and they know, we teach them, and I don't say me anymore because I don't get to do it anymore. It used to be my favorite part. But Carrie and her team, and then they turnkey that professional development. So we have internal expertise, and I would put my life on it that if any of these companies wanted any of us to go work for them, we probably would be offered quite a few dollars to go work for them, which is why I'm so frustrated by the legislation or the way it's being interpreted, because I don't believe we're better off with one of these programs because I
don't
worked
either.
in a school where this happened, that we got half of $1 million to make this happen, and we made it work through everything that we supplemented with, not because of the program. This
Right.
was done through Reading First. We've lived this life before. We know we have the expertise internally. So,
You know,
So
the
that's
example
just-
is Calkins was being pushed by the state 10 years ago.
and
you
we
know?
were like, absolutely not.
Yeah, we
when
didn't jump
we
on that
never
bandwagon.
would have jumped on that bandwagon. Calkins, everyone loved Calkins, and it was missing the entire. Actually, in order for us to use their analysis of their own program, they want us to sign a non-disclosure statement, so we won't sue them for using it. That's just to give you an idea. And Carrie, myself, and Amy, and I, we would have never selected that program. We weren't here. So we
And
have
we've
to
been
supplement.
modifying along
Since
the
we got
way,
here, right.
knowing that when we looked at it, there were holes in it. And so slowly but surely, with some of our technology programs and with some shifts in instruction, and we have slowly but surely been filling the holes. Now the state has come out and given us a concrete list of things that we have to address, which is super helpful. But I don't necessarily think that we need a packaged program to do that. I think that we can build it, and it will be just as good. That being said,
We may not have a choice.
we may not have a choice. So I'm really hoping for our sake and for our teachers' sake, because I think that right now is not the time to kind of take the efficacy of our teachers out from under them and give them a whole new program to learn and implement, which we all know takes a couple years to get off the ground and for people to start to understand. I think that we can do it, and if they allow us to, we will, which will be significantly less, not zero, but significantly less than purchasing one of these programs.
So that's basically your due diligence. That amount you put in is in case our waiver doesn't get approved. But in the meantime, you're still working to build
Right
our
now, we
curriculum.
didn't even put it in for this year. And that we
Well, I
put
thought you
it-
put in a small amount.
We put in a small amount for
And that's to
professional
do the-
development, and you know that amount, I'm with you. That's why I'm kind of dragging my feet a little bit, because I want to see how everything shakes out. I don't, I want to see how CAPS is doing a lot of writing back and forth with the legislation and with the state of Connecticut, and there's a lot of factions that are really fighting this, and so I don't want to commit financially or with time or money into something that we're just going to have to redo. I think that happens a lot of times in education. We start running down a road and then we're like, ooh, we have to go back and we have to do it again. And so I'm really trying to save our teachers from having to do that. And so I'm trying to be smart, fiscally responsible, but also put the best possible program in place, because like Dr. Macri was saying, when we first came here, we knew that Calkins wasn't hitting all of the buttons. And so this is a great opportunity for us to start to supplement and build so that it does hit all of the boxes. And so none of the legislation is bad. It's just the imposition of how we can solve these problems without knowing what the resources are in the districts and how we might be able to meet these expectations in different ways that aren't necessarily as costly to the taxpayers and probably better in the long run.
Catherine, you had a question?
Yeah. It's a two-parter. So your increase that you put in, does it fall underneath the curriculum piece under professional development, curriculum writing, or the elementary reading portion?
It's under the elementary reading, I believe.
Okay, that's part
It's
one.
like 20, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
it went up
20.
It went up to
5, yeah, I had 5 in
It
there.
went
and
up like
it's 20.
$15,000,
Yep,
almost
yeah, so there's a
$16,000.
20. So that's really what I have earmarked for our professional development and potential pilot materials.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, we're applying for the second waiver to try and get us to not have to buy into one of these programs. So how are you going to determine what to pilot if we think we're going to get this second waiver?
That's why this is why it's I'm dancing right now. In my head, that $20,000 could be used to supplement our current curriculum. I am walking slowly towards this because I want to make sure that I'm not investing in, like right now, the way that the legislation reads, we have to implement a program. There's pushback on it, but the way that it reads is by July 1st, where we've written the waiver to get an extension for a year, we have to implement one of these programs. That's the way it's written. And so I am hoping that changes, but I can't bank on that because the law says that I have to implement one of these programs. So either the $20,000 is going to be used for pilot materials or in programming materials to supplement our current curriculum, which would still be a pilot anyway, because they would be new. They're still going to need professional development on the new components of whatever we introduce into the, we're doing a couple pilots now with some Haggerty materials and some things that we think are helpful. It's, like, it's a dance. I wish I had a good answer for you because that would make everything for me so much more clear. But it's as clear as mud.
Thank you.
Yep.
Was that, did you say the waiver was approved, or we haven't even been approved for the waiver for
the-
the 1 year?
Well, all right. So 2 waivers, right?
Right.
The one is the economic hardship. I'm assuming, I haven't heard, we applied for it. I'm assuming they're going to give it to everybody because pretty much every town that I know of has applied for it. So
Okay.
yeah, there'll be mayhem if it doesn't. So I haven't gotten a yes, but I am really confident that that is going to happen. The one that is questionable is whether we can say, without purchasing a new program, this is the second waiver, without purchasing a program, with these additions, based on our data, we think that we are going to hit all of the boxes that when you were evaluating these programs that you have said we have to purchase also hits. And I think that, it's nice and easy when it all comes in one package, but there are a lot of great programs out there that only kind of address one component. And so by piecing all of those together, Foundations and Haggerty, and there's still, we have all of these books from Calkins that I don't want to throw away. They're books. We can still, even if we're not following that particular instructional model, we can still use the materials. And so those are all of the things that are on my minds, and we're really trying to think this through and make smart decisions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Dipti?
Regarding the model math curriculum, how is that different from, is it radically different from the curriculum the middle school is using right now?
We have right now, again, we have started, right? So they're using right now a program called Desmos that is in alignment with the K-8 curriculum model, and so we have baby steps working in that direction. Yes is the answer. It is a different, it's different curricular and it's different instructionally. Is it as major as an entire new reading program? No, but it is different.
Oh, so the more professional development also goes into that?
Yeah, but yes, but we don't. No, not from that money. We have the expertise in district to do that for the K through 8 model curriculum support for teachers, between coaches and our own internal supports. We can do that ourselves. We don't necessarily need to earmark any outside professional development for that. Should we need additional materials, that may come up. It's not going to come up next year. We already have the Desmos program that we're going to work off of, and we think we can build our own materials based on what that program is already giving us. But that's not to say that we won't have to supplement in the future, but I think we're in good shape with that.
I think,
Just
I would
manpower.
think there would have to be STEAM-related grants out there.
There's nothing that we.
Really?
Nothing that
There is nothing
I
that
wish,
we
and I
qualify.
actually looked, because sometimes you can find things from Lego,
find-
or
and
some,
fly.
like sometimes a Lego company will put, so
They don't
I.
like us.
Connecticut, so that's not how much
They,
I
yeah.
know, but like there are things that I'm constantly peeking at to make sure that
We
we
thought
are.
for sure we were gonna.
Oh, I was
we
devastated
were
when
that
we
last
didn't
grant.
get that grant.
Our grant was so beautifully written. It's
It was.
innovation. It is perfectly written.
The after-school
There was
program? Yeah.
no.
And it would have helped us to pilot what we want to do on a much larger scale in an after-school program. And it would have given us the funding to, there are certain technology resources that we'll need, and certain printers and certain things that we're going to need in the new building that we could have kind of scooped up in that grant that would have headed off some of those materials that we would have needed in the future. And so that one hurt when we didn't get that grant. We were really hopeful. We had a partnership with ACES. They wrote the grant with us. They were going to help to provide us with professional development support, because it really is the STEAM middle school is a heavy lift. That is, as far as I know, our middle school has never had an interdisciplinary curriculum, some middle schools do, we don't. And so, a shift from an interdisciplinary to a STEAM curriculum is big, but it's not a giant leap. When you are going from, your sort of individualized curriculums, and then you need to make them interdisciplinary, bring in the humanities, and also have it be project-based, which also impacts instruction and delivery. It is exciting. It is so exciting, and I am really, really excited about it.
I assume it's going to tie into all the standards and all the changing standards and everything, right? Okay.
Absolutely. It's great work, but it's a lot of work.
But we could do it.
Oh, we can so do it, and we're going to do it awesome. Yeah. But it takes manpower and time and, commitment to making sure that, all of that is put together in a way that's cohesive for our students.
Okay, but there's no money for it currently.
Right.
All right.
Right.
We will keep trying.
And it's going to take a lot of training with your
Yes,
teachers.
right now for this year, we have a timeline for this year. We are working on project-based learning and starting there. I think that what we will do, just because of the nature of that type of curriculum, use like a backwards design model. Start with project. I'm talking to you because you're an educator. So we'll start with the project, the assessment, which will be real worlds and interdisciplinary, and then work out from there in the curriculums and use a backwards design. We've been using rigorous curriculum design, which is another framework that we use when we're really looking at standards, but this is really looking at kind of the outcome and then working out. And so that model is best for what we are working towards now. So this year is primarily project-based learning. We'll go from there. We'll start to build projects. We'll start to build curriculum. We have 4 years. So that's where we are now. It's going to be fun. Yep.
Any other questions for Carrie? Okay. Moving on. Any questions for Sarah O'Leary regarding ESS on that slide? Any questions on any of the following slides before we get into more detailed questions? Matt?
Yeah, the ESS. So it's projected to have a savings of $300,000. That takes into account the $500,000 plus that we're paying for. I mean, I know that contract is from November 2022 through June 2024.
And next year for this budget, we put in, it's $305,000 for next year.
It's how much we're paying for it. Okay, and we're still so.
I'm anticipating that on the tuition transportation side, we wouldn't have to, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I'm anticipating on tuition transportation side, we wouldn't, we would save, up to or more, 300,000, which is about 3 to 4 students.
And I know that's really fluid area. It's hard to
Yeah.
make those predictions with
It could be 500,000, right?
But we're spending 300,000, but we're saying we would have spent 600.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that
Yeah,
that's in my
certainly.
head correctly. Thank you.
That's accurate.
Lori, did you have a question?
I'm on this page here. I don't know if I'm getting too far ahead, but it was a Siri question.
Not related to special services?
Yeah,
Which
it is.
tab are you on?
Under
Student services or?
under staffing and benefits, but it's under the special education page.
Okay.
Just so I don't want to. Here, it's on. Doesn't have a page number. Yeah, I think that's it. I was just sorry, I'm trying to show her and talking to.
Are you under certified personnel?
Yeah, so on.
Oh, yeah, here.
Sorry, I don't know how else to. Okay. So there was some open special education. There's 3. And then there's down at the bottom the speech and language for the middle school. It says open. So is that currently an open position?
Not currently, for next school year.
So are these positions that you're planning on filling, or?
Yes, we're planning on filling them, but they're not with actual people, so it's just a position right now, and we'll have to hire.
Okay, that's what I was. So are those positions right now that somebody is in right now, or these are new positions? Like
None of these positions are new.
they're new, so you're just anticipating that they're openings for next year.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, am I understanding that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we could possibly have, because of the way the contract works, we may have people filling those positions right now, but they may only have gotten a 1-year position, so we may have to post again. It could
Yes.
possibly be that same person, but you know what I'm saying?
I
It
do
could just-
understand.
It's the way
I
that
got
they
it.
So
were
it's
hired.
posted.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand. That was just unclear to me. And thank you. And then you had passed out new sheets. So for the under special, I don't want to get too far ahead if you want me to wait until we get to the back, but under student services, we got new sheets. I was just trying, like, comparing the columns to see the differences. Do you want to wait on that, or?
I can talk to that.
Okay.
I made a mistake. I have 2 different sets of documents. I have an Excel set of documents and a Google set of documents. And we made some last minute changes, moving around expenses in special education. And I forgot to update the Google documents. So that's why I provided you with a new set of documents just for special education. There is no financial impact. It's just that we changed some dollars within the categories. So I apologize for that, but there's no change in the overall budget for special education.
Because I see it's still at the 13.49. It's
Correct.
just a- okay.
Yeah, I just
All
made
right.
a small error on that. I
Okay.
apologize.
Thank you.
And do you want to tell everyone what to take out and replace with this?
Sure. Sure, if you go to your Student Services tab, the one that was first in your binder, you can shred it, remove it, make a line through it.
The whole section, right?
The whole section. This is a whole new section.
The entire
The
section.
entire section.
The first page,
Yes.
A lot of
Oh.
the pages are the same.
Yeah.
To
Yeah,
I
give
just
you a new
figured
pack,
I'd give
yeah.
you not replacement pages, just the whole section. Sorry. Hate when that happens.
I know, it's just so much less confusing. It may be one line different, and we'll get all confused.
Has that already been updated on any online versions? Okay.
I'll put it tomorrow,
Okay.
and I'll take the old one down, so there isn't any confusion.
All right. Any other questions on the presentation slides? Jen.
So, Ensa, you had mentioned when we were talking about the slide on reductions to the 2023-24 requested budgets, you had mentioned for teaching and stipend, and you said this is not definite, but I'm just a possible maybe removing an elementary teacher, increasing class sizes. You said most are at about 22. How large would you get, or how large would those classes get if we removed a teacher?
Right now,
You have that?
now remember, it's only January 24th. We can have kids moving in and out very easily.
Not all of our classes are at 22 as well.
No.
That's like the biggest situation
That would
that we
be,
have.
right, so, yeah, right. So in looking at our enrollment today, actually, December 28th, not even today, when we did these numbers, we have some class sizes that are of 19 and 20. So we have 7 teachers at the elementary level every grade. So we have the ability to say, class size may go up to 22, 23. We may cut a position. That doesn't necessarily mean a person, because we may have attrition. We don't know what could happen, family, medical, maternity, attrition, retirement, all of that, right? So we can increase. We have the ability to increase class size. Do I ever want to increase class size in elementary over 22 in grades 1, 2, 3? No, never. K, even less, right? That doesn't mean contractually we are not obligated. So there's a number. There's also a lot of research that says that once you get over a certain number, and people will have differing opinions, right? That it doesn't necessarily matter. What matters is the needs of the students in the classroom. So, for example, specific demographics of students perform better in smaller class sizes, but if you're talking about 1 or 2 or 3 students more, it doesn't make much of a difference at all, and it makes no difference at all. We also are very cognizant right now, though, that we are coming out of a pandemic, and our students are behind in so many different ways. What you noticed so far is that I'm going nowhere near cutting intervention. We cannot cut intervention, and in order to not cut intervention, we have to make a decision, and one of the decisions that I'm weighing is, do we cut intervention and have the teachers provide that intervention, or do we increase class size and have interventionists continue to provide that intervention? That is where you get your biggest bang for your buck, because you're pulling kids out based on their needs. So if we increase class size by 2 or 3 kids across the board, do we love the idea? No. When you have class size of 19, you could go to 23, you can go to 22. It's in grade 4 or grade 5, it's not going to be that catastrophic. Do I want to do it? This is something that Cromwell hasn't. It used to be, back in the day when I was a teacher, all of us were told that we were being, if we were hired brand new for 3 years until you were tenured, and it was first day year 4, now it's first day year 5. We all were told we may not be able to come back because there's always budget issues. There were always budget issues. We got out of that habit, and I'm very happy about that, because we don't want to lose talent to other districts, especially when we're losing teachers to the profession. We will only do that if we absolutely have to, and it will be based on that CBA. People will be notified based on their contract and not a minute sooner, because it could change. It could even change after that. But the chances of that person finding another job are great. We're in a different era. But we have some places to move. We also have some movement if we restructured some of our specials. Looking at, we've done creative scheduling in the past, and it's nice to have one person in one building all the time, but we may have to split some of the specials depending on what the needs are of each school. So if you're cutting sessions, you're cutting specials. If you're cutting specials, then you could share between buildings. See there's a ripple effect that doesn't necessarily impact instruction and may not necessarily impact staff. That's what we're trying to do. But as you can see, my little stickies are everywhere, so I don't forget. This is what I'm looking at. This is when I did it. This is what I'm thinking of. Conversations also with the high school. How big are our class sizes? We enjoy, which is a wonderful thing. This is why people move to Cromwell, right? This is why you live here. Smaller class sizes and smaller class sizes at the high school. Each caseload, teachers, they don't go over 100 students.
They don't go over 85 in some cases.
And that's wonderful, because they can provide that attention.
In most cases.
And what they need, right? That's what you pay to live here, and why your homes cost what they cost. Does it have to be that way? If we don't have money, we have to be creative. Will it have an impact? Yes, it will have an impact. Of course it will have an impact. But the least amount of impact that I could think of when I look across the district. But I'm not ready to put any number. I'm just giving you examples of things that we've looked at. We've looked at every class size across the board, pre-K through 12, in every subject area, and by teacher, by class, by AP, by level 1, whatever it is, we've looked at it.
We looked at cohorts. There's some class grade levels that are smaller than others, and so it's a puzzle.
Right, and it doesn't always work beautifully.
Right.
We could perhaps say that this isn't going to work. You could say to me, just like you may say when you see the buses, right? You may say, Enza, why do we have 12 buses? It's costing all this money. I see bus 13 every single day. There's nobody on it. And I could say to you, I need to pick kids up in that area, and that bus goes to this particular area, and the other bus has 70 kids on it, and there's not much I can do, or I won't get the kids to school on time. So it's not divided equally, but it works, because the puzzle, every chess piece you're moving and you're changing, and that's how it works with schedules. We have rotating schedules. That throws a little, it's hard sometimes to, if we didn't have rotating schedules, perhaps We could share more staff across the district at the secondary level. Not good for kids. Not good for kids. So we're trying to stay away from the stuff that is not good for kids and would have the greatest impact on kids overall.
Did I see your hand up before? No. Oh, okay. Catherine, you had a question.
Yeah, with the cuts that you're thinking of doing, I'm not quite sure what goes into all of the amounts on those reductions, but is there a possibility that you would cut actual classes at the high school level?
So right now, we are looking at sections. We wouldn't cut anything. What we would cut is sections of a subject area, but we wouldn't cut like an overall program or a class or anything.
So that could
what do
make
you mean?
scheduling tighter. Like that could make scheduling more difficult because if you have two sections of the same math class and now only have one, that limits what students can do with their schedules. It may limit the electives they can take. It may limit the options they have. Is that correct?
And it could possibly mean
They may have to choose
study
between.
halls. Yes.
Right.
They may
Okay.
have to choose. Yes. There's limitations that are definitely put
If
on
you
it.
choose, I know we approve adding courses in, but can you choose to cut a class without, it doesn't need to go through the board, correct? Or does
No,
it?
based on our policy.
I think it does. I think if we were to remove a course, I mean, it's different than if we're not offering it because of low enrollment. That's different than saying we're never going to offer this course
Never
again.
again, yeah.
I think we would.
If there was low enrollment, I could say we're just not offering it
For this
semester
year,
or
right?
this year. We'll
Sometimes
try
that
again.
happens, you know, like especially with like the high level APs. If you don't have the, you know, momentum going into those courses, you may not offer them for a
So you have
semester or
a
year.
good, there are,
Like there's
there is a
AP.
very good scenario that I'm thinking in my head, but I don't want to get everyone crazy because we are not there yet. But can we cut something dramatically that can have an impact on? Yes, I first said no because we were really looking at things that we would just be cutting sections. But we have had a simple conversation. Literally, it's been a 30-second conversation of, do we only offer Spanish in Cromwell? Because we have so many students that only take Spanish. However, we have a large number of students right now in 8th grade that want to go into French. But if we get in the situation where Spanish is greatly needed, obviously greatly, we have enough teachers to cover, and we have smaller class sizes. Could we possibly think of that as an option? It's not an option that I like whatsoever, but can that possibly happen? Yes, and nothing is off the drawing. Like, we are at the point in this budget that I want to be very transparent that nothing is off the table right now.
Matt.
That was weird. Kind of a follow-up to what you were saying. So the question was, can you cut a class without board approval? And it sounds like the answer is no, that would have to come to the board. But can you cut a section without board approval? That you can do. So you could actually wind up, right, so you could say, well, sorry, this math class only has one section now, and so now kids who want to take that math class become trapped into it as far as it limits their other choices, their options when they go to scheduling. The other question is we're throwing around a lot of hypotheticals here, and I'm with you. We don't want people to freak out and think people's jobs are on the line. That's definitely not the goal here. Is to avoid that at all costs. But if the proposed budget were to be cut, that makes that scenario more likely.
Well, yes. So just to give you an idea,
I just wanna make sure
if we
I'm
were
clear on
I
that.
just have a number for you because you didn't ask it yet, but I want to give it to you so you know. If we were to be flat funded right now, today, with what we just gave you, going into next year with everything, we can't fix utilities, we can't certified salaries, all of that, as is, we would be at a 5.2. That's without anything changing as far as increasing instructional supplies. It's literally paying our bills, paying our contracts, and that's it. We won't be able to survive. So that's why I have to make these cuts, right, when it comes to staffing, because that's where we're going to get our money. Most savings. Yep.
Great. Any other questions? We can move on to another section if we're ready to. Sure, Jen. Kelly, sorry.
That's right. For the tab of staffing and benefits, the longevity category, what does that stand for?
I'll take a try at that, maybe with a little help from Michelle. This is only seen in the certified section for teachers. In a prior contract, there was an amount that was written into the contract that if you were here for a certain amount of time, I'm sorry, I don't know what the time was, the time length, many years, you would receive a little bit extra money. So that's what that longevity, it does not exist in the contract any longer, which is why there's only a few.
That's why it's only in a certain one.
Correct,
Okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
But was there a grandfather clause in that agreement that says those people who used to receive longevity will continue to? I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
In the staffing, but I'm just looking at the substitutes. I think you alluded to it earlier. I mean, it had 457,000. I mean, it's like
Yes.
4,200 days. Is that
That consists of daily substitutes, building substitutes, the medical leaves, and an increase to what our daily rates will be. And I'll hand it over to Michelle. We have to remain competitive in order to attract substitutes. So we did need to figure in an amount that would bump them up a little.
when you're estimating substitutes, though? I mean, we went through COVID, so I mean, if you had 5,000 days out, we now projecting 4, or is this a standard? I mean, do we always run 4,200 days ish?
Well,
I just
I
doing
will
math,
say that
yeah.
the math, you can't do the math that way
Okay.
because there are, I believe, 7 positions on that line that are in the building 183 days. So there are 7 building subs that are in the building at rate X. And then if we have to bring in someone to cover that's a retired teacher, there's a rate for that category of person. So it's multiple, it's not just a straight take our $100 a day and divide it by this number.
Okay.
It's not, it doesn't equate to, that many absences, specifically day-to-day absences.
I think the hard part to understand, sometimes if you're not living in this world every day, it's a little crazy. So we have subs that are, they're building subs. We anticipate that there's going to be someone out almost every single day. What the building subs do is provide consistency, and on days where we have 3, 4, 5 people, less coverage. So if you have a teacher that has a planning period and we have to pay them to go teach a class, we have to pay them coverage. By the time you pay a teacher to do 2 classes for coverage, you might as well have paid an entire day of a sub and used them throughout the day and provide consistency. The kids don't even know they're building subs. They think they're teachers. So there's consistency for kids. It saves us money, and it throws this number off a little because you would think that, I mean, the absences are the absences. It is what it is. But a lot of that money is something that we anticipate because we know we're going to need those subs, and we're trying to do what's better for kids instead of just trying to get people, which you can't even get, by the way, right now.
Are we anticipating less going forward or more going forward after 2 years of COVID or 3 years of COVID, however you want to define it?
Well, that's hard to anticipate. You're talking about for leaves?
Well, I mean, just you're budgeting for coverage. Are you budgeting for more coverage post-COVID, or are you budgeting for less coverage?
I would say more coverage post-COVID. There's more people going out on maternity and medical leaves. We've seen a lot of different things happen. Obviously, when someone goes out on a leave, as specifically Ann stated before, you're also paying for the person that's going out because they have sick time and they qualify under family medical leave to get paid out for their, utilize their sick time. And then you're bringing in a long-term sub, and depending on, if it's a long-term sub that's
certified, we have certain standards that we're required to pay them. If it's a retiree, and there's a lot of shortage areas that are designated by the Connecticut State Department of Ed, like special ed, school psychologists, speech language pathologists, you can't find them, so you're pulling a retiree. And retirees, we're required to pay them at their designated rate when they retired. So you might be paying a long-term sub, if it's a full year, $90,000. Because we're required by the state to pay them at what they retired at. So it depends. It's a moving number. We anticipate that it's going to be a certain number, and we hope it comes in at a certain number. But since COVID, I've seen our numbers increase. Well, unfortunately, people are still, getting sick, and when they're sick, they're out at least 5 days. So, we have flu season, we have COVID. So, when people are out, they're out for at least 5. So you have your building subs covering or daily subs.
Is that still a benchmark for everyone when they're out sick? That's not if you test positive, that's just in general. If you're out sick, you
That's
stay out
pretty
5
much
days?
if you test positive,
Okay.
or, if you have, that's what we're seeing when people are testing positive, or we've seen that right now with flu.
Okay. All right, we already touched on curriculum and instruction, but is there anything in that one spreadsheet there that anyone had questions on that's next in the binder? Just in the curriculum and instruction, it's just basically the list of all the programming, all the licensing contracts. Anything there? If not, anything in central administration? Dipti?
What is executive coaching support?
I can explain that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's professional development and learning and other areas. We provide support to our administrators. It fluctuates when someone is new. So we had a new principal who's doing a wonderful job, but we have to provide coaching. And then there could be other reasons why we provide coaching to administration.
Any other questions in that section? Matt?
Legal counsel arbitrator went up.
Everything went up, yeah. All of our fees have gone up.
20,000.
Oh, yeah, this year. So,
I mean, our legal counsel is, that's
so we have more,
Shipman. But what's arbitrator? Is that relating to contract issues?
right, the arbitration this year for the teachers.
Okay. Well, I know because we split. I assume we split the
We
cost with
split.
the teachers. So
Yeah.
their union had a cost. We had a cost. Okay.
Anything else in that section? And keep in mind, we can submit some questions afterwards. Dr. Macker, we'd like them by Thursday, the 26th,
Right, when you
so
get
that
them.
she has time to respond and get them to us before the next meeting. All right, the next section, system-wide. I had a quick question there. Just on the late bus, how much is that used?
I did ask last time, and I forgot to tell you all. At the middle school, we have it twice a week, the late bus, correct? Sue? I'm sorry, late bus, twice a week, right? Twice, and it's heavily used, right?
Okay, thank you. Any other questions in this section?
Just the homeless student transportation went from 10,000 to 50,000. Is that just we have more students who are homeless, and that's what you're talking about? Okay.
And could I just, those are the rides that we often can't use DACO, so we are looking, at other services, and they are at a cost. So we did increase it because we realized we hadn't budgeted, accurately based on numbers.
And that's with doing some ride share with surrounding districts. We're still, transportation is out of control.
Sure, Lori, go ahead.
Do we get reimbursed for any of that from the state for homeless students? Is there a percentage like there is for special education?
There's no
or-
reimbursement, but we do get, some homeless students may not be living in Cromwell, they may be living in another surrounding district, and we, under McKinney-Vento Act, we split the transportation with them. So we're not always having to pay the full transportation. It's often split, but still, it's, significant, the dollars.
It's not really fair that it gets put on the district, right? That's a huge.
It's the McKinney-Vento Act is pretty intense. I wish the state would provide. If they're in DCF care, it's a different situation. But until they're in DCF care, we are on the hook. And like we said, if it depends on the nexus, sometimes the nexus can split. We have to be careful. The rules are like up to 180 days. It's, yeah.
If they're not in our district, wouldn't they go to a different district? That might be a stupid question.
That's a great question. So because the McKinney-Vento Act, which I want to say it's at least 10 years old now, right? Sure. So it's the Homeless Act, and there's so many different ways that students could be considered homeless so that it wouldn't disrupt everything else in their life is disrupted. So we try our best to not disrupt their school life. So it used to be whenever you moved, you have to go to the district that you live in. Then there was small situations where if you were in DCF care, you could stay. And now, and we have to figure out, pay for transportation and educate. Now it's, if you don't have a place to lay your head that is considered your home and you are living with family because you lost your home, or most of it is because you lost your home, you lost your rent, or whatever it is, you can't afford it, and you live with family in a different town, temporarily in the eyes of McKinney-Vento is up to 180 days. We must transport you to that home, even if it's it could be as far as Waterbury, it could be Stamford, it could be far, yeah. So that's what that McKinney-Vento is. I could send you some. It's pretty interesting to read about. So it has increased a lot of the costs on districts. It would be great if we could figure something out with the state, but I don't see any of that happening anytime soon.
And just one other example, we could have a student that was a Cromwell student and, lost their home and is living in Hartford, okay? But under McKinney-Vento, they still have a right to come to Cromwell Public Schools. And that's when we end up splitting the transportation with Hartford. And they do have a choice. They could go to Hartford, but a lot of the time they want to go to their home school. This is where they've lived. So it does give them a little bit more choice. And a lot of the time they're just sad situations and we need to help them. But, it's always at a cost. Yeah.
Matt, did you still vote? Okay, great. Okay. Then we will move on to each school. If anyone has any questions specific to ECS. Going once, going twice. No questions? Okay, Woodside. Okay. And Cromwell Middle School. Any questions there? Nothing for the middle school?
No, I do.
Catherine.
Okay, so I did notice that we are cutting some of the intramural sports. I didn't realize ski club falls underneath that. I know it's a great social thing for a lot of our students, so I understand what predicament we're in. But I'm also looking at, I know it's a minor amount, but we have school security for events. What events do we need school security?
Mandated for evening. I don't know if Kelly's here. If it's an evening event at the high school, then it's mandated.
It's middle school. They had to bring in police for security in the past year, so they decided to put a small amount in their budget for the upcoming year. So
Okay.
police coverage for the event.
Okay.
It's in the evening.
A couple of games that we know could get.
Yeah.
For the middle school?
For the middle school.
So it is, and I think
That's
it's really
specific
important for
like, for
everybody.
a dance.
Oh,
not-
for the
not
dance.
for
You're right.
sports.
I
I'm
was
sorry.
gonna say,
I'm sorry. That was for the dance.
Yeah.
Right after school, I was kind of surprised.
I thought there was an evening. I forgot. That's the high school.
The high school,
That we have to double up.
High school, I
sometimes.
understand,
Yeah.
especially in light of what's
No,
been
middle school was the
happening.
dance.
And it's a very I think it's only $400.
It's only 400, but I was just curious because
Yeah.
we've never seen that before.
And it's
so
the first time it happened was this fall, maybe.
Yep.
I think
And
it might
we
have been this
haven't
fall. Yeah.
yeah, and then in the physical education, it's on page 11. We went up by $2,000. Why? Is the cost of supplies higher? Is there?
I believe that was put in the budget. They would like a portable AED unit so that when they are outside, that they can have that. And the AED units are expensive.
Yep.
But we did leave that in there, health and safety. We thought it may be a good purchase for those situations when they're not in the building.
Thank you.
Kelly.
So there won't be any intramural sports at the middle school level?
No, we will have all of our interscholastic. So intramurals, I try not to say this too often. It's wonderful for our kids. It's awesome. It is definitely something that parents, another reason why Cromwell's so great. But it's a luxury. If you don't make the team, you get cut from the team. We were paying stipends for teachers so that the kids can play each other, and we just can't afford that anymore. So kids will have to play out of school, and on teams. Now, if we may decide, and this isn't off the table, we could say, because this is it can be play to participate. It's a very small amount of money, but it's a lot of money when you're saying, are we going to hire a para or do intramural sports that parents could, have their kids join in after school activities on their own, which a lot do. They do both. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But we could perhaps charge a small fee, because if you have a soccer team, a boys intramural soccer team of about 20 kids at $515, you do the math, it's not all that much. People may say, hey, we want to do this. There's nothing from us stopping us. But very few districts have intramurals anymore.
So, but those intramurals are basically a tryout.
For
They
some
shouldn't
sport,
be.
not for all of
Yeah,
them.
they shouldn't.
For soccer
They
and
actually
for
have to
basketball,
have
right?
tryouts now.
So
Yeah.
wouldn't that extend the amount of time we'd have to pay the coaches, because they would still have to have a tryout? You would
No.
just have a 2-day tryout and then bam, you're on the team?
Yeah, they'd have to.
How
figure it.
come volleyball is 100% intramural, correct?
Intramural?
So why do we have it listed on the bus expense still if it's getting eliminated?
They sometimes travel, don't they?
Yeah, but if we're eliminating it for next year,
that
why
may
do we
have
have a
just been
bus
a-
expense for it?
Probably just a mistake. That's not the high school, Ann? Yeah, if we're eliminating volleyball,
I'd have
we
to ask
wouldn't
Scott
need that.
Penny just to clarify that for us.
Because that's 100% intramural.
Sure.
These
It
are-
doesn't seem very difficult to ask potentially parents to pay the amounts for like soccer and baseball. Volleyball, I can't imagine splitting that. I don't know how many students play, but that's kind of a larger amount. Obviously, ski club, they're already paying like $300. I don't think they'd want to spend another $200. So I think it's something that kids look forward to. So I'm disappointed to see that go. I think it's kind of a rite of passage when you come to the middle school, but that's just my opinion. It's like so exciting to see them.
I would agree with that. It's
Yeah.
very popular
Yep.
at the middle school.
Do we know how popular these things are? Like, do you have numbers for how many participate?
I don't know exactly, but we can get those numbers. These are hard. No one wants to do any of this. They're all hard decisions.
It just feels
we
like
just
this
can't
one
have
hits
everything.
the kids
They all
directly.
hit. They all hit the
I
kids
understand
directly.
curriculum and
Every single
everything.
one. Education is very important. They all hit the kids directly. None of these are not hitting our kids. That needs to be very, very transparent. We are a school system. All of this is going to impact our kids. We could tell you the numbers, but we have to look at and revisit and look at our goals. These opportunities are somewhere else out there for students. It's a great thing, but you have to pay for it one way or another. It's not a requirement. It's a fun thing, and I love it. I want to do fun things, but we can only do so much without a cost.
Any other questions on the middle school? All right, moving on to the high school.
Yes.
I just had a similar question to what Catherine on page 20 under athletics.
Back to the middle school? Sorry.
No, I thought
You're
we
in
were
the high school. Okay.
Yeah, just a similar athletic director. It went from 3,400 to 5,000. I was just curious what that increase was. Why that went up? Like, what was? If anybody knows. Right here, so page 20. Athletics, the very first one, athletic director.
Went from 3,420 to 5,050.
The fees.
Oh, those
Is
are the
that the one?
fees to participate. So all the fees for us to participate, we put it under athletic director because Kelly's the one that has to hold them, either Kelly or Scott, but it's to participate in all of these.
So the fees for all these went up
yeah.
that much?
Yeah.
And the district pays all that?
We pay all the fees for, this is what I'm saying, like, if you look at the small picture of intramurals, if you look at the big picture of athletics, we cover a lot in Cromwell. So you can't just take a little piece and say, we don't, you have to look at everything that we're offering athletically and to our students. And we are increasing, like, there's over $1,500 of fees for our kids to actually be able to compete. That's a big number. So, yes.
Right. Can I just make a comment on that? You know, a lot of emphasis and a lot of talk is spent on special education, but there's a lot of other areas that we spend a lot of money on sports and everything. So I just wanted to note that.
Well taken. That's, when putting this budget together, all of that is taken into consideration. So we look through everything and make
$5,000,
cuts.
is that what we're talking about?
Well, that's a big jump in fees. That's a big jump in fees for, everything is increasing. Everything is increasing.
Okay, that's a drop in the bucket, though. I mean, I think that.
Right,
But if you think about, if you were to think about, and I can let Lori speak for herself. Lori, speak for yourself. I'm just going to make, I look at programs, you guys, you're looking at it one way, and obviously my job is to look at it, and yours is too, right? And I've been looking at it for months, as a big picture. So as a big picture, if you're looking at just fees to participate in something, I think is what Lori's trying to say. $1,500 is a drop in the bucket. It's nothing. But it's $1,500 to participate in those events, right? Then it's probably another $1,500 or $2,000 an increase in music, because that's increasing. So then it's another drama. Everything is increasing. So by the time you add it all up, if we want our students to be able to compete, we're probably talking about a large number of fees overall across the district in athletics or clubs or extracurriculars. Is
It
that fair
touches
to
a
say?
large number of
Right,
students,
it charges, yeah, but so does their education.
Go ahead, Kelly.
It's still about the high school and kind of athletic. On page 18, if you flip over, the physical education, it went from 982 to 8,625.
Wait, what page? I'm sorry.
18. Just
Under what school?
the high school. Under the physical education. Just wondering, that's a big jump.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
The high school has asked for additional equipment to replace equipment in the weight room, because from what I understand, I haven't seen it, but from what I understand, it's deteriorating and it's becoming unsafe. So the request was actually larger, and we asked them to cut it back.
So they've been asking for, and Andrew can come up, Kelly and Andrew cut this. We require our kids to participate in athletic training, And a lot of what's happening is our kids are going to gyms, which they should, their parents are paying for it. But some kids can't afford that, and some kids have to work and don't have the time. So this is not only part of athletics, but it's also part of PE and a class. So we're getting to the point where everything, you're using the same materials, right? Why wouldn't you? You use it for athletics, you use it for PE. But when it's PE, it's a requirement, and the stuff is getting old and dangerous, so we have to replace it. Am I wrong?
That is
I
spot
did listen
on.
to you when you spoke.
Thank you. That is refreshing. That's refreshing.
Aren't you proud?
That is spot on. Most of the weight room equipment we have in there was donated to us when we started our football program back in 2001. So most of that weight room equipment is extremely old and in dangerous conditions, and we do run classes explicitly out of that space. So essentially it came down to, if we weren't going to be able to get that, we wouldn't run the courses. And there are very and this is just a start. And we'd be looking for other booster clubs to help us out, obviously, long term with bigger improvements, because believe it or not, the original base was about 70 grand.
Wow.
So we're just taking one small step.
Thank you.
And that's a lot of what we're doing is one small step, kick the can, kick the can. You can only do that. So we are there. We can't kick the can anymore. There's nowhere to kick it.
All right, any other questions for the high school? Okay, student services, we did hit on that already, but if anyone has any further questions in that section? Did I see a hand? Matt? No? Okay. Okay. Okay, and, oh, Catherine, go ahead.
The contracted services is pretty much the ESS portion, correct? Is that a big chunk of our?
The increase?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So it's almost misleading because we're not showing that we're saving money from that.
Correct, but if you look at, I guess it's, yeah, half one, whatever it's.
Yeah.
But if you look at the tuition increase, there are kids that I would have anticipated keeping out, but I'm bringing them back, so tuition could have actually been more without ESS. So it could have been, like we were talking about, another $300,000 increase in that piece.
But it could change, and we may have to outplace 3 more on top of that. Like, it's such, we have no idea, but our anticipation is that we won't have to outplace. But if we do, and if we have to meet our students' needs.
But because
That the whole point of it
Yeah.
is to try to be
Yeah, and ESS
cost per head.
is only for certain students. So there are other students that we may feel that this is not the right environment. So I just want you all to understand that. But it is for certain students and for the most impacted students that we've, I think, dealt with more recently with the mental health. So it's going to hopefully cover a larger number of students that we'd be able to keep in. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Anything in the facilities and operations section? Alan? Is your mic on?
In terms of electricity. Yeah. What's going on with WIS and the power energy is like 3 times what it is for
Central Air?
for Edna or even a middle school. It just seems.
I'm sorry, Alan. Are you asking why does WIS cost more money than the other schools?
Yeah, it's significantly just popped out when I was looking at it. Why is that 186,000 and the other 2 schools are 30 some odd and 50? What are we leaving plugged in at WIS?
I can get an answer for you for that. I don't know off the top of my head. I have a feeling that it's just the way the school. It's a newer school, and you would think it would be more efficient, but it's probably got additional lighting and additional things that the Edna C. Stevens didn't even exist when it was built. So my guess is that it. But I don't want to. I want to get you a more specific answer than that.
And ECS and CMS do not have Central Air, so maybe that plays into it. Yeah, true. Catherine?
So I know our utilities costs are going up, and I think she just stepped out for a second, but is our actual usage increasing or just the cost of the utilities across the board? And, oh, there she is.
Well, we're not going to put her on the spot tonight.
Okay.
Right?
I don't know if she knows the answer. That can be I can send it in as a writing question.
Yeah, we can look into that.
Okay.
Usage.
But you may not know it, so that's fine. Is the actual usage in our utilities increasing, or is it just the actual cost of them?
Thank you. Any other questions in that section? All right. Capital outlay. That's more or less an overview. And then we have our tuition. Any questions on that? I don't think we went over the per student information more toward the beginning, and I just thought that was important to point out that it looks like.
I think this is very important for all of you to know, because this is where a lot of our problems stem from. It's
It's right after the executive summary, and it's 3 pages in from there.
So on page 3, and I think we need to do this the opposite way. If you were, they're lowest to highest. So basically we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lowest from this list of what, 23? Is it? 7, 8, 9.
23 districts.
Yeah, 23. Oh my God, I don't believe I remember that. 23 districts. Oh, it's right there. 23 districts per pupil allocation. And the reason why it was even worse before last year. So we are grateful to the Board of Finance. However, this is pretty telling that we are spending $18,134 per student. And in Old Saybrook, they're spending $25,787,000. Now, you could say in Ledyard, which we did go and visit one of their schools, and we don't want to be, right? Because the superintendent was complaining about how little money they have for students and why they had to cut so much out of their budget. And they're at 16,496. So the history of the budget increases is on the page before this over time. So if you look at, they were pretty low in over the years. I would say the last budget that was 5.08 in 08-09, I believe we were in a slight crisis back then. I would say our crisis has increased tremendously since then. But before that year, it's very incremental, very small percentage increases. So this is the kicking the can, and you have nowhere to kick. And things have changed a lot since legislatively, mandatorily, what our kids are, and COVID. It is what it is, whether we want to hear it or we don't want to hear it. We're all sick of hearing it. But there are expenses that come, and then there are hard decisions to be made. So I think looking at this picture and looking the historical numbers, it is what it is. And then looking at where we fall per pupil allocation, per pupil is important too.
And that we started this at 9-point-something%.
We started at 9.94.
Yep, got down to 6.74.
And got to 6.94. And this has been going on for months, and it's grueling. So we're tired. You're all tired. We're tired of playing with numbers and looking at numbers, but there comes a point where really difficult decisions have to be made. And as your superintendent of schools, I want nothing more than the 9.94. I mean, nothing less. I want the 9 point. Actually, I want more. So making these proposals to you is not easy. We've all been up. Carrie and I probably don't sleep quite often because of the changes that we have to make. None of us want to see any of this happen.
So obviously, we're not voting on anything tonight, but if there are any thoughts as to the overall number or anything that anyone would like to see changed or Any other suggestions you want to throw out there before our next meeting? Feel free. And then we could look at them at the next meeting. Nothing? Catherine?
No, you just want our questions in by Thursday.
Right.
Okay. If we have additional.
Okay, so everyone, I'm assuming, is somewhat comfortable with the number? Matt?
Sorry, I had a question earlier. I just totally skipped over, but page 8 in the introduction. I'm just curious. Our equipment cost went down 14.58%, a little over $63,000 from this current year to the projected next year. But in the back of my mind, I read that and I think, wait a minute, I know we've got boilers falling apart and AC units and all this other stuff. So how did that go down?
Those are the bigger things. Yeah, you weren't paying attention at one point, were you, Mr. Zabrowski? Those are the smaller purchases.
Okay.
Smaller things like weed whackers and some instructional equipment too, not just facilities, but it's combined into one. We're going to do the best we can. Like, for example, this year we had no, we weren't going to replace that snow brush, and we had to last minute because it went. So that if that happens, we have no choice. But we will try not to. There's still an increase from prior, but if it's a big problem, we have to go to the town.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, so questions to Dr. Macri, and those will be due by Thursday if possible, and if you could just copy me on them, I'd appreciate that. I don't think we want to add any topics for future agendas tonight, so we'll skip over that. Any comments, updates, announcements?
So do you want me to go back to, so for next meeting, I do have the future agenda. We will give a field trip update. We also have the Next Generation Accountability Index report that we need to share with you from the State Department of Education. We could wait if
I
it's
could do that
important,
with
but-
with our spring data. It's not urgent that we do it right now if you prefer. Like when I do my data presentation at the end of the year, I can go through what our report card is. It's not that pressing.
It's
but
not, I
that's
don't
up
see
to-
it on here.
Yeah, it's up to you guys.
It was on the agenda. It's on the agenda. We already have our agenda
Okay.
started for the next meeting. Lisa already has the agenda started, so I
So
just
you're
wanted to double
proposing
check.
postponing,
It's up to you. It's important I think it goes hand in hand. The report card goes hand in hand with what we're talking about so that you can understand the urgency of increasing academic performance. I think that's important for you to see, even though, we're all saying COVID, 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 but that's still our report card. That's how we're performing. We're still going to be held accountable. I think as we pick this budget apart, it's important for you to see how our kids are performing and what we need to do to make those shifts so that they perform better. So I would like to leave it on so that you can see that report card. It's out there, it's online, you could Google it, it's everywhere, but it's not always easy to understand. And I think it's I think it's very important. So I would like to keep it on for Carrie to do, because it ties into this big picture of why I am so adamant on making sure we increase student performance. I can't make the numbers lie.
that makes sense.
So, okay, and then you want field trips for sure, right? You want us to just give you, we have.
What, for February?
Yeah, we have, remember you had asked for.
Yeah.
We have an update. Do you want?
It's not going to be like a long discussion item, but just if there's a
No,
list.
we have a list and we could, she's making a list,
Okay.
yeah, we're in the process of it.
year?
Yeah, we are. I think those were the only two things, and then we were going to go straight to budget. Do you want to hold on celebrations with students and staff again, or do you want us to do it? What do you want?
Let's hold.
Hold, okay. Those are just the things I was told by my boss, Lisa Hicks, to make sure I asked.
All right.
I don't want to bring them into the dark days of our budget right now.
No, I know, these poor kids, I know.
All right.
And again, for anyone who's listening, this is all, it's January 24th. We're only halfway. I gave you a lot of what ifs, and I had to give you real examples so that it can connect. Anyone who's listening, that doesn't necessarily mean everything is being cut and everyone has to run and worry. It's just that we have to be very cognizant that we are making some shifts and that we have to make some really hard decisions, but that we have not agreed upon anything yet. And I am going to hold on to every single thing that I believe we need for our kids with every ounce of my being, as Mr. Ireland knows. So, and he isn't the whole Board of Finance, but I'll put him on the spot since he's the only one here. That's what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to make difficult decisions, and that's what I want you all to know. And I thank these amazing people who have done everything that they could to get this together in a really difficult year.
Okay, let's
Thanks.
go around. Lori, I'll start with you. If you have any comments. Alan? Matt? Okay, anyone else? Any administrators? Okay, Kelly, Dipti, Kelly, Jen? Yeah, nothing. Okay. Well, thank you for all of your hard work. I know it's been a labor of love. Thank you for everyone who's here tonight. And thank you, John, for sticking around. Appreciate it. And thank you to all our board members for taking the time to really go through the budget. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? Was that Kelly? Who's it? Oh, Dipti?